He stood at the end of my driveway, arms crossed like a self-appointed queen, barking orders at the cops she had just summoned. He's refusing to comply with HOA mandates. He has to move into the community if he's building here, she shrieked, her voice echoing through the pines. The officers approached, tense but professional. Karen looked smug, until I reached slowly into my coat, pulled out my wallet, and flipped open my federal badge. Her face drained of color. That's when everything changed, and when she realized she had just made the worst mistake of her entitled little life. The wind rolled gently across the ridge, rustling pine needles and lifting the scent of raw timber and earth into the air. I stood at the edge of my property, boots grounded in red clay, surveying the frame of the cabin I'd been building with my own hands. Every beam, every nail, every line etched in the soil was mine, bought fair and square, free from any strings or suburban nightmares. Or so I thought that the first time I saw her. She was glaring from the other side of the gravel road, arms akimbo like some villain from a homeowners association brochure, short blonde hair, too stiff posture, lips pursed with suspicion. I was bent over unloading lumber from my truck when she marched up without a word of hello. You can't just build here without going through the HOA. I looked up, one eyebrow raised. Good morning to you too. This land isn't in your HOA jurisdiction. Her eyes narrowed. Our plat map shows otherwise. Well, your plat map is wrong. I bought this property directly from the county. It's grandfathered in county zoning. No HOA, no restrictions. I turned back to my truck. You can check with the records office if you want. She didn't leave. That land used to be part of Whispering Pines before the bylaws were revised. You're still in the development sphere of influence. I paused. Sphere of influence isn't a legal boundary. She took a step closer, her perfume strong and artificial. We're just trying to maintain the aesthetic and values of the community. You wouldn't want to be the kind of person who ruins that, would you? Something in her tone pricked at me, a blend of condescension and veiled threat, dressed up as neighborhood concern. I gave her a look that stopped short of a smirk. Lady, I didn't move out here for community potlucks and mailbox guidelines. I came for silence. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a ridge beam to set. That should have been the end of it, but Karen didn't like to be dismissed. And people like her, the type who breathe control like oxygen, always come back. Over the next week, it got worse. First it was a printed flyer tucked under my windshield wiper. Some ridiculous HOA packet about joining the association voluntarily, complete with dues schedule, architectural guidelines, and rules about outdoor visible tools. The next day, a bright orange warning sign mysteriously appeared at the edge of my property line, citing some imaginary violation about unauthorized structures. It was duct taped to one of my trees. By Thursday, she escalated. I had just fired up my generator when I heard the tires crunching across gravel. 2 police cruisers, blue lights flashing. They came slow, deliberate, stopping just outside my open gate. Karen was right behind them in her spotless white crossover SUV, leaning out the window like a proud schoolteacher who'd caught a student cheating. I killed the generator and walked toward the cars, wiping sweat from my brow. One of the officers, a younger guy with a tight haircut, stepped out and approached cautiously. Afternoon, sir. We got a call about a disturbance on private community property. Said you were building illegally. I glanced at Karen, still parked at the gate, watching every word. This is my land, I said calmly, purchased directly from the county 6 months ago. Not in the HOA, not under their jurisdiction. You're welcome to check the plat and deed numbers. The second officer, older and clearly more experienced, had joined his partner and was scanning the site. Do you have any ID on you? Karen stepped out of her vehicle, emboldened. He's refusing to comply with HOA mandates, she said loudly. This land used to be part of our subdivision. He has no right to opt out just because he doesn't like rules. I ignored her and reached slowly into the inside pocket of my coat, my fingers closing around my worn black leather wallet. I opened it smoothly and flipped it around. Both officers leaned in. Federal law enforcement badge, my name, my agency. I watched Karen's expression go slack, like a switch had been thrown inside her. The color drained from her face as if someone had opened a valve. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. The older officer looked from me to her. Ma'am, this is a civil dispute over property lines and zoning. If your HOA has a concern, they can pursue it through the county or court system. But this is not a police matter, Karen sputtered. But he's not trespassing, the younger officer added. And he's not breaking any laws that we can see. I nodded slightly and handed them a printed copy of my deed, which I kept in my truck for exactly this kind of nonsense. All in order. My surveyor's number is on there too if you want to verify the boundary. They didn't. The older one handed it back, gave me a small, respectful nod, and turned to walk away. The younger officer lingered a moment longer. Sure you're okay out here? He asked in a lower voice. Seems like she's been on you. I smiled. I've handled worse than suburban power trips. He chuckled, then joined his partner back at the cruiser. The two vehicles slowly backed out, engines humming, leaving only the echo of their departure in the quiet woods. Karen stood still, for a moment, stunned and embarrassed, before turning back to her SUV, but I wasn't done. I walked to her window, leaned just enough to meet her eyes. You made a mistake today, Karen. You assumed I was some lone guy you could bully into your little gated fantasy. Next time, maybe ask who someone is before you try to bring cops into it. She didn't respond, just slammed the gear into reverse and peeled away down the gravel road, dust kicking up behind her. I watched her disappear between the trees. Then, I turned, walked back toward the cabin frame, and started my generator again. I had work to do. For the next few days, the woods stayed quiet. The only sound was the hum of my tools and the wind whispering through the pines. No more unexpected visitors. No flyers, no fake warnings duct-taped to my trees. It felt like maybe, just maybe, Karen had finally taken the hint. But silence, I've learned, isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a retreat to regroup, a storm pulling back before it lashes harder. On Sunday morning, I returned from town with a load of insulation and groceries. As I turned onto my property, I saw something that made my chest tighten up. Notice of pending lien sign had been staked into the ground near my front gate. Large red letters stamped across it, issued by Whispering Pines, HOA. Fake, of course, completely toothless, without jurisdiction, but meant to intimidate. Beneath it, someone had taped a copy of their bylaws in a plastic sleeve, with a section highlighted in yellow. All new construction must comply with HOA standards. I got out of the truck slowly, lips pressed together. The paper flapped. In the breeze, like a dare, I took a picture of it. Then I tore it down. The thing about people like Karen is, they don't understand boundaries, physical, legal, or moral. They believe rules apply to everyone else. They use the illusion of authority to enforce whatever version of order suits their comfort, and when someone challenges that illusion, it threatens the entire foundation of their control. So, I wasn't surprised when a certified letter showed up the next day. It had her fingerprints all over it, thick HOA letterhead, official language, but clearly crafted to scare. It claimed I was causing division in the community, violating construction codes, and endangering neighborhood harmony. It warned of further legal remedies if I didn't cease construction until the matter is resolved. I laughed out loud. Then I filed the letter where it belonged, next to the firewood pile, waiting to be kindling. But I wasn't going to just sit back and wait for Karen's next tantrum. I wanted a paper trail, something that would hold up when, not if, she escalated again. So I called the county planning office. I already had my permits, but I wanted confirmation, in writing, from someone who could shut this down for good. Clerk was helpful. She scanned my parcel number and confirmed everything on record: land use approval, exemption from HOA boundaries, zoning compliance, and historic grandfather status from a defunct 1990s development that never fully formed. Apparently, Karen's plat map was from a proposed expansion that never got approved. Smoke, mirrors, and wishful thinking. I asked if I could get that in writing. The clerk laughed and said, "I'll do you one better. I'll notarize it." That notarized letter arrived 2 days later. It was beautiful. 1 page, clean, direct, official. I laminated it and pinned it right to my gate where Karen's fake notices used to hang. The next time she drove by, and of course she did. Slowly, pretending not to look, I stood beside the sign with my arms crossed, just like she had done that first day. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away, as her foot pressed a little too hard on the gas. I thought maybe that would finally end it. Then came the drone. It buzzed overhead while I was up on the ladder finishing fascia boards. I barely heard it over the circular saw until it dipped low, almost eye level, matte black, no markings. It hovered for a moment, facing me, then zipped toward the back of the cabin. I climbed down and followed it, watching it disappear to the row of identical homes behind the trees. I filed a complaint with the FAA, took video, documented everything. But even that didn't stop her. The next morning, 2 HOA board members came strolling up my driveway. Matching polos, clipboards, and all the confidence of men used to pushing people around in meetings. They introduced themselves with smug politeness, like door-to-door salesmen who knew they were wasting your time but didn't care. "We just wanted to have a friendly chat," one said, gesturing toward my structure. "Some of the residents are concerned about the aesthetic consistency of the neighborhood." "The neighborhood ends 2 lots over," I replied. "This is unincorporated land." He smiled like I was a confused child. "It's more about the visual unity of the entire ridge face is a certain ... flow. We're asking politely that you submit your plans to the board for informal review." I stared at him, then glanced at his clipboard. A picture of my cabin frame was clipped beneath the top page, probably taken by that drone. I stepped closer. "You took aerial photos of my property without permission. You sent threatening letters. And now you're standing here like this is just a friendly conversation." The other man stepped in. "Look, there's no reason for this to get hostile. If you'd just considered joining the HOA, you'd be surprised how much easier everything becomes." There it was, the play dot. It was never about aesthetics or bylaws. It was leverage, control. They wanted me boxed in, bound by their rules. Just another quiet little pawn who mowed his lawn to regulation height and painted his mailbox beige. I smiled then, slowly, deliberately. "You boys really don't know who I am, do you?" They exchanged a glance. Give Karen my regards, I said, and tell her next time she sends someone up my driveway, she better bring a lawyer or a warrant. They turned without another word and left, their shoes crunching over gravel, retreating down the hill like kids who'd knocked on the wrong door at Halloween. I went back inside, locked up the tools, and sat on the porch with a coffee, letting the stillness return. They were pushing harder now, but they were making one critical mistake. They still thought I was just some stubborn outsider with a grudge. They hadn't yet realized who they were really dealing with. I didn't wear the badge every day anymore, but I kept it close. Old habits don't die easy when you've spent over a decade chasing fugitives across state lines. Most people never ask about your past when you move into the woods. They just assume you're running from something. But Karen and her HOA weren't ready for someone who'd spent his life running toward the problem. 3 mornings after the clipboard twins had tried their intimidation act, I woke to the low rumble of tires on gravel. Again, it was 6:43 a.m. The sun hadn't fully broken through the tree line yet, and the air still carried that chilled bite only the forest keeps past spring. I stepped out onto my porch with a mug of black coffee in hand, watching 2 shiny black SUVs roll to a stop. Outside my gate, they weren't cops. Not yet. These were HOA lawyers or the kind of firm Karen could afford. Anyway, trying their best to look official. One of them stepped out, holding a folder. The other had a handheld camcorder. Yes, a camcorder. Real subtle. The first one called out, "Mr. Cole, we're here to serve notice of intent to pursue civil action regarding non-compliance with Whispering Pines HOA mandates." I didn't move, just sipped my coffee. "You're being recorded for documentation purposes. You've been notified on 3 separate occasions. Continued construction without board approval constitutes willful defiance." I walked down the porch steps slowly, letting the gravel crunch under my boots. "This land isn't part of Whispering Pines, and every time you clowns show up here, you prove that you've got nothing but paper and attitude. We've filed the boundary contest," the one with the folder said. "That means until the dispute is settled, your development rights are frozen." I laughed. "You really think county zoning gives a damn about your HOA fantasy maps?" He blinked, thrown off for a moment, "Until a court determines otherwise. You're trespassing," I cut in, stepping within a few feet of the fence, "and you're harassing a federal agent while doing it." That made him pause. What's?" he asked, his confidence faltering. I set my mug down on a fence post, reached inside my coat, and pulled out my badge again. No theatrics this time. I held it eye level and steady. Let it speak for itself. Their eyes fixed on the gold and black. The camcorder guy lowered his lens halfway, then remembered to keep filming. His hand was shaking. "My name's Cole Harper. I'm with the U.S. Marshals Service. Field agent. Off rotation. You're welcome to call and verify it with the regional office. Hell, I'll even give you my supervisor's direct line." The folder guy's mouth opened, but no words came out. "This badge means I don't scare easy. I don't respond well to bullies, and I know exactly how to document harassment, false claims, and drone surveillance for what they are targeted. Coordinated civil misconduct. You want to play legal games? Let's go. But understand this, when I push back, I don't stop. At your HOA, I go through it." The camcorder guy had stopped recording altogether. Folderman was already backing toward the SUV. "This isn't necessary. We can revisit the complaint and circle back after you do that," I said calmly. "And while you're at it, tell Karen she just made it personal." They left without another word, tires skidding as they turned onto the main road. I stood there until the dust settled, then walked back to the porch and picked up my coffee. That afternoon, I made some calls. First was my buddy Nate, who still worked in the regional field office. He laughed when I told him what was going on. "Let me guess," he said. "Overly aggressive HOA with a Karen at the helm?" "You know the type," I replied. "You want me to flag your name in case any claims get filed under your jurisdiction?" Already expecting it, he agreed to keep me posted if anything crossed official channels, and in the meantime, suggested I write up a statement detailing the timeline. I already had photos, letters, drone footage, and the notarized zoning confirmation. I added it all to a digital folder that night, time-stamped and backed up in 3 locations. By the time the HOA board held their next community meeting, which I wasn't invited to, obviously I'd sent certified letters to the county clerk, the sheriff's office, and the zoning commission documenting everything. I attached a polite but firm statement outlining the harassment I'd received, copies of every fake notice, and a redacted version of my credentials for record. I didn't need to flaunt the badge to remind them that I wasn't the kind of man who folds. The sheriff called me personally 2 days later, said he'd received the packet and assured me no one from the HOA had legal standing to enforce anything on my land. "You're well within your rights, Mr. Harper," he said. "If they show up again, call us directly." It was the first time I'd heard someone around here sound embarrassed on Karen's behalf. But what happened next told me everything I needed to know. Karen didn't send more lawyers. She didn't call the police again. She didn't even escalate. Through official channels. She went door-to-door. Neighbors told me later, quietly, off the record, that she'd started spreading rumors, that I was aggressive, paranoid, possibly dangerous, that she'd seen signs of trauma and feared for the neighborhood's safety. She told them I was building without oversight, that I was a wild card, and whispered things like, "He's probably armed up there." She wasn't fighting for control anymore. She was afraid of me. But here's the thing about fear. People like her don't admit it. They don't retreat. They twist it into something else, a crusade. And they always find a way to justify pushing one step further. So when I heard tires again at dawn, when I saw the third set of police cruisers roll into view, this time with someone in a blazer from the county land office riding shotgun, I didn't reach for coffee. I reached for everything I had built, piece by piece, and prepared to burn it all down if I had to, because Karen had just made the final move, and I was more than ready to make mine. The lead cruiser rolled to a stop just past my gate, and I knew right away this wasn't like before. These guys didn't look annoyed or confused. They looked prepared, like someone had told them exactly what they'd find and exactly what they were supposed to do about it. Karen's fingerprints were all over it. She followed them, of course, not in her SUV this time, but in some smug little compact she probably borrowed to look non-confrontational. She wore beige now, not her usual sharp pastels, and carried a binder instead of a phone. She thought this was the finale, that she had me cornered, her last play, backed by county brass and law enforcement, but she didn't know I had already prepared for this day, because I knew people like her don't stop until they lose loudly. The county official stepped out, eyes scanning the cabin's frame, the property, the fresh gravel path I'd finished just a day earlier. He was tall, mid-40s, wearing the county seal on a windbreaker. "Mr. Harper." I nodded, stepping forward. "I'm Matthew Klein, Deputy Director of Zoning and Land Use. I was called out to verify a disputed claim regarding illegal development and potential encroachment onto protected HOA land." I tilted my head. "You have the parcel number?" He looked surprised. "Yes." I pointed to the laminated county letter still hanging from my fence post, right beside the HOA's last failed notice. "That's a notarized letter from your office. Confirms zoning, exemption, and ownership. Signed by your clerk. Dated last week." Klein walked up to read it. The younger officer followed him, while the other two stayed near the cars, arms crossed, watching me like I might explode. Behind them, Karen stayed close to her car, but she was smiling. Watching Klein read the letter, then opened a file folder of his own plat maps. Survey diagrams, probably the same ones Karen had handed him like gospel. I waited. He frowned. "This matches our GIS records," he finally said, turning to one of the officers. "He's not within Whispering Pines jurisdiction." Karen stepped forward. "That's not correct. That letter is referencing a superseded map from the 2001 revision. It doesn't take into account the 2005 board vote that extended parcel oversight." Klein cut her off. "Ma'am, oversight and legal jurisdiction aren't the same thing. That board vote was never recorded with the county or state land office. There's no binding authority on Mr. Harper's property." Karen's face flickered, her mouth twitching like she might interrupt again. But for the first time she didn't. She saw it. Felt it. The shift. I walked closer, keeping my tone. I have every communication documented. The drone flyovers, the false warnings, the harassment by your board, the lawyers who came without court orders, and the repeated police involvement without cause. Klein turned toward me fully now. "I'm not here to enforce HOA pressure tactics. I came out because of repeated complaints that suggested county zoning violations. I see now that those complaints were based on incomplete or inaccurate information. They were based on fiction," I said, "and weaponized to force me into a private HOA I never agreed to join." One of the officers approached Karen. "I'd like to ask, have you ever been presented with legal documents showing this land falls outside your HOA's jurisdiction?" I was told by the board. "Have you, personally, ever confirmed it with the county?" Karen's lips parted, but she didn't answer. Klein stepped in again, flipping through the last few pages of his folder. "Mr. Harper," he said, "would you be willing to submit a written affidavit outlining the sequence of events, so we can make sure this doesn't happen again?" "Already printed," I said, walking back toward my porch. I returned with a sealed manila envelope and handed it to him. Inside was my signed affidavit, every photo, every video, copies of the fake liens, and the flight log from the drone that had buzzed me. He took it, nodded, and turned to the officers. "This matter is closed as far as the county is concerned, and frankly, I'd recommend the HOA stop pursuing actions outside their legal reach." That was it. The cops left first. No sirens, just quiet engines and a pair of silent nods. Klein followed shortly after, holding the envelope like it weighed more than it did. But Karen, she stayed. She didn't drive off this time. She just stood there, staring at me across the fence like something about her world had cracked, and she couldn't figure out where the break started. I gave her a long look. Not angry, not smug, just final. "You didn't want peace," I said. "You wanted obedience." She opened her mouth but nothing came out. "You thought this place would fold me into your rules." You thought enough pressure would make me leave. Or bend. But you forgot one thing, Karen. She blinked. You're not the law. And I don't break under pressure, I build through it. She stood frozen, and for the first time, truly silent. The next week, the board quietly removed my name from their pending membership list. No apology, no retraction, just erased. Me like I was never part of their little power game. But the neighbors noticed. Some waved when they passed. One man, older guy in a flannel shirt, stopped by one morning and said, "Glad you held your ground." Not many do out here. I nodded. Said nothing more. By summer, the cabin was finished. Dark wood siding, black metal roof, a small porch where I drank coffee each morning. No fences, no cameras. Just trees, quiet, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd won something bigger than land. I'd reminded someone like Karen, and anyone watching, that power doesn't come from fake authority. It comes from knowing who you are, and never blinking when someone tries to take that away. If you enjoyed that story of standing your ground and turning the tables on petty power, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people find these wild HOA takedowns. For more real, bold stories where the underdog wins big. And if you've ever dealt with your own HOA drama, drop your story in the comments. We might just turn it into the next revenge tale. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.